She had billions of dollars, but she couldn't buy the one thing she wanted most: her daughter back. Margaret Holt was not a woman who cried in public. She had built a real estate empire from nothing, survived 2 recessions and buried a husband. But nothing had broken her like losing Claire. Claire was 31 when she died. A car accident on a rainy Tuesday night. No warning, no goodbye, just a phone call that changed everything. Every Sunday morning, Margaret would visit Claire's grave at Greenwood Cemetery, alone, no driver, no assistant, just her, a single white rose, and the silence she had grown used to. She liked it that way. The cemetery was quiet on Sunday mornings, empty. She could talk to Claire without anyone watching an old woman cry. But one Sunday something was different. From a distance, she saw a figure kneeling at Claire's grave. A man. He was wearing a gray work uniform, the kind the cemetery staff wore. A janitor. His shoulders were shaking. He was crying, and in his arms, pressed against his chest, was a little girl. Maybe 4 years old, dark hair, tiny hands gripping his jacket. Margaret stopped walking. Her first reaction was anger. Who was this man? Why was he at her daughter's grave? This was her space, her grief, her Sunday morning. She walked faster. "Excuse me," she said sharply. "What are you doing here?" The man looked up. His eyes were red. His face was young, maybe 33, 34. He had dark stubble and tired eyes. The kind of tired that doesn't come from one bad night. The kind that comes from months of pain. He stood up quickly, the little girl still in his arms. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I'll leave." "Who are you?" Margaret asked. "Why are you crying at my daughter's grave?" The man paused. He looked at the name on the headstone. Then he looked back at Margaret. Something crossed his face. Recognition, maybe. Or fear. "Your daughter?" he said quietly. "Claire Holt," Margaret said. "Yes, my daughter." The man closed his eyes for a second. When he opened them, they were wet again. "My name is Daniel," he said. Claire and I were close. A long time ago." Margaret stared at him. "Close how?" Daniel looked down at the little girl in his arms. The child had been watching Margaret with wide, curious eyes the whole time. She hadn't made a single sound. "This is Lily," Daniel said. "She's 3.5. Margaret looked at the child, really looked at her, and then her heart stopped. Lily had Claire's eyes, the exact same shape, the exact same shade of green. Margaret took a step back. Her hand went to her chest. "How old did you say she was?" Margaret whispered. 3.5, Daniel said again. His voice was barely above a whisper now. "Claire didn't. She never told you, did she?" It wasn't a question. He already knew the answer. Margaret sat down on the stone bench beside the grave. Her legs had stopped working properly. Claire had been pregnant. Claire had a daughter. And Margaret had spent 3.5 years not knowing this little girl existed. "Why?" was all she could say. "Why didn't you tell me?" Daniel sat down too, Lily now perched on his knee, still watching Margaret with those green eyes. "It's complicated," he said. "Claire and we had a relationship for almost 2 years, but your family never approved of me. She knew that. I was just a guy working maintenance jobs. No degree, no money. She said if she told you about the pregnancy, you would try to control everything. She wanted to do it her way." Margaret wanted to argue. She wanted to say that wasn't true, but somewhere deep inside she knew it was. She had spent Claire's whole life trying to control things. The schools she attended, the men she dated, the career she chose. She had pushed Claire away without ever meaning to. "Did she ever plan to tell me?" Margaret asked. "She was going to," Daniel said. "She kept saying she'd find the right moment. She was going to bring Lily to meet you on your birthday that year." He stopped, swallowed hard. "The accident happened 3 weeks before your birthday." The cemetery was completely silent. Margaret looked at Lily again. The little girl had leaned her head against Daniel's shoulder. She looked tired, but she was still watching Margaret, as if she was trying to figure out who this old woman was. "Does she know about Claire?" Margaret asked quietly. "I tell her about her mom every night," Daniel said. "She knows her mom is in heaven. She knows her mom loved her. That's the most important thing." Margaret pressed her lips together. She was not going to cry. She had told herself that 100 times on the drive over. She was not going to cry. She cried, not quietly, properly. The kind of crying she hadn't allowed herself in years. Because sitting in front of her was the piece of Claire she never knew she had. A little girl with green eyes and dark hair and a father who brought her to a cemetery every week, so she could be close to a mother she would never remember. After a long moment, Lily slid off Daniel's knee. She walked over to Margaret, this small, serious child, and she put her tiny hand on Margaret's knee. "Don't cry," Lily said. Her voice was soft and round, the way 3-year-old voices are. "Daddy cries here too. But then we talk to Mommy and it gets better." Margaret looked down at that little hand, and something inside her, something that had been locked shut for 3 years, cracked open. She put her hand over Lily's. "You're right," she said. "Let's talk to Mommy." Over the next few months, everything changed. Margaret didn't try to take over. She didn't call lawyers or make demands. She just asked Daniel if she could be part of Lily's life. Slowly, carefully, on his terms. Daniel said yes. It wasn't easy. There were awkward lunches and uncomfortable silences. There were moments when Margaret wanted to throw money at every problem, and Daniel had to remind her that wasn't what Lily needed. There were arguments. There were apologies. But there was also Lily running to Margaret at the door and calling her Grandma Maggie. There were Sunday mornings at the cemetery, the three of them together, talking to Claire. There were bedtime video calls and birthday parties, and a little girl who grew up knowing exactly where she came from. Margaret never got her daughter back. No amount of money was ever going to fix that. But she got something she didn't expect, a second chance. Not to redo the past, just to show up better for the family she almost never knew she had. Sometimes the thing you're looking for isn't lost. It's just waiting at a grave on a Sunday morning, with red eyes and a little girl in its arms. And if you're lucky enough to stop and ask instead of walk away, everything can change. Watch the next video on screen right now. You won't want to miss it.